Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome to the History of Video Games. My name is Wes, and I am here with Ben today. How are you doing, Ben?
I'm doing great. How are you, Wes?
No, I'm doing pretty darn good.
Good.
So do you want to start us off today with what you've been playing recently?
Yeah, that'd be great. I don't know. I feel like I have a couple different things I want to say. I bought another game, which is for me is like a big deal because I rarely buy games.
Right.
But we were playing. What were we playing with our friends from down south? Oh, Tabletop Simulator.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And one of our friends, Andrew, was like, "Hey, Civ 6 is really good. You should get it." And I was like, "I have Civ 6, but I was kind of like okay about it. I didn't really like it that much." And he's like, "Well, you should look at the expansions because they're pretty good." And so I don't know why, but I was just like, I went to the Steam store to at least put them on my wish list to, watch for when they go on sale. And I went over there and there was like a complete my bundle. The only thing that was I already had in the bundle was the base game, but the whole bundle was like $30, and the two expansions are $30 and $25 by themselves. So I was like, well,
Wow. It's basically get one free kind of thing.
get one free and all the other DLCs they have too, which are like a single civilization for $3, here and there. But
Right.
it ended up being like $100 worth of bundle for $30. It was like 70-something% off. And I was like, let's just go for it. I was feeling it. And so I got those and have started playing through Civ 6 again, which has been pretty fun. It's definitely like, I've already remembered how bad it is for that one more turn mentality that it's known for.
Oh, yeah.
But like sometimes I'll be like, okay, it's getting late. I should probably stop. And it'll be like 2 hours later. I'm like, I really had to stop now. That's happened several times. But I got through a game. Ultimately, I lost, and nothing really I could do about it, to be honest. It was like a cultural victory, and they just like were super far ahead, and I didn't notice. But it was pretty fun. I enjoyed it, and now I've started a second game. I just started, so there's nothing really new to say about it, but I'm enjoying it so far. I still am not convinced that it's better than Civ 5. There's a couple things I just don't like about it as much. This might be like a purely subjective thing, but like I just don't think the art style is very nice.
Okay.
It looks like a mobile game, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Compared to the more realistic and kind of, I would even say even darker feel of Civ 5 for some reason. But in any case, it's still a great game, and there's nothing as cool as like having a civilization that starts at like year negative 5,000 and going up to current day.
Right.
And it's even fun, like, I don't know if this is in Civ 5 or not, or even in the base Civ 6, but I bought an archaeologist, and he would like go to where battles happened thousands of years ago, which of course was like earlier in that game, and dig stuff up. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, actually. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool little things, and it's still a great game, but I want to put more hours into it, to be honest with you. That's one thing I've been doing, Wes. What have you been up to? And also, you have Civ 5, right? But you haven't checked out Civ 6 yet, right?
No, I haven't. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's all 4X games or specifically the Civ games, but it's just not really my type of game. I like playing it with people, but something with that sort of strategy game, it just doesn't like meld with me in whatever way. I'm not super good at them. I probably could if I played them a decent bit, but yeah. So I don't know. I have Civ 5, played it a bit, and was kind of just like, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, I definitely think like it's way better with real people, because like I was playing and I got a message, it was like in 10 turns, one of the AIs is going to win, and then the other AIs like should have attacked it or tried to like prevent that person from winning the game, but they don't, that's not what they're programmed to do. It's like it would be way better for real players to try to like actually prevent the game from ending right now.
Right. Like kind of gang up and help each other out, or at least try to eliminate the front runner. Yeah, and I do also like the stories you can make from it when you have more than one person playing in like the dueling civilizations, because you get funny non-historical stuff of like when Gandhi fought George Washington or whatever, right. And like all that, it's you can kind of add a little bit more flavor to it, I feel like, when you're playing it with other players. Yeah, so that hasn't really been my thing, but one series that I forgot how much I enjoyed until I just jumped back into it is Fallout.
Oh yeah.
I've had Fallout 4 for, well, since it came out. I remember we were back when we were roommates in college. I stayed up the night that it came out to play it at like 1 a.m. or whatever it was, which is crazy because I know it's not that new of a game, but I think it's like 5 years old, which seems nuts that Fallout 4 is that old. Probably just because I forgot that Fallout 76 ever happened.
That's probably good.
I need to take a look at it again because I think it's like a situation where the launch kind of sucked, but it's actually better now. But either way, Fallout 4 was the one I went back to check out. Another in a disappointingly long list of huge open world role-playing games that I was just too daunted by to ever actually finish. Or what usually is the case is I do the main story, I get distracted by side quests, and then I burn out on the game because I play all the side quests instead of doing any more of the main story. I did the same thing with Witcher 3, which I still have not beaten.
Same, dude.
And it's a fantastic game, too. But I was like, all right, give Fallout 4 another chance. Of course, even though I've spent an ungodly amount of hours in it, I did the classic thing me and you always do, Ben, where we were like, well, I got to start a new game. I can't go back to an old save.
Exactly.
Put another 40 or 50 hours in just to get back to where I was, but whatever. But it was nice starting over because I forgot that. I mean, Fallout has some graphical stuff, which is a little like cartoony or goofy, and it's also like this. The universe itself is sort of a mashup of dark and funny, but it still has like some good dramatic cinematic moments at the beginning mixed with the humor that I like totally forgot about. And it just really does a good job of setting the story. One of the main complaints people had with it right when it came out is that like it's a Fallout game, so you can do basically whatever you want, but the whole main mission is to like find your son who was literally just taken from you as you saw your wife murdered before your eyes. Like that happens in like the first 10 minutes of the game, and it's like, oh my god, this is super urgent. But then you walk out and it's a Fallout world, and it's like, oh, forget my son, I can do whatever the heck I want.
Right.
So I was trying to play it a little bit more straight this time and just barrel through the main story since I never beat it before, and also because I forgot until I got back into it that Fallout has some really good storytelling. And I guess a lot of Bethesda games in general have really good storytelling. So I'm doing that. I'm getting close to where I left off with the main story last time, and I'm trying real hard not to get sidetracked by all the good side quests. But it's been great just remembering the really cool gun modding system they added in Fallout 4, which it's a little weird because there's not too much of like benefits and negatives of multiple attachments. It's more like this is better than this, but still it does like visual customization of the guns, so it's really cool. And just exploring the world and the crazy amount of companions that you can have too, that all have like their own unique backstories and develop relationships with them. So it's been good. I'm glad that I just, for whatever reason, was hit by the nostalgia to go back and try it out. And I'm hoping I stick with it and actually beat the main campaign this time, because I'm sure it's a good story.
Yeah. That sounds awesome, though.
Yeah, it's real fun. I love that universe, too. I mean, I love most, if not all, post-apocalyptic genre games. But just like the weird, dark humor of the Fallout universe is great. They do like some crazy crafting of the dungeons, or like the, I don't know, dungeons instances, the sort of like places that have raiders that you can loot and all that sort of stuff. But they do like some great scene dressing of like the one you walk in, there's just a random toilet that has a teddy bear wearing glasses and reading a newspaper on it. And like they just always have weird fun stuff throughout the universe, and it's real good.
I think it's a pretty interesting combination too. It's like kind of futuristic, but it's also like 1940 at the same time. It's a pretty cool mashup, I think. Yeah.
The way they did it as like the alternate universe where like the style never really changed from the 50s, but it's the year, I think, 2077 when the bombs drop, and like 2277 in some of the games. Yeah, it's this super interesting meld, and it gives it like this really unique style and flavor that I feel like not a lot of other games have, because Fallout did it way back when with Fallout 1 and kind of stake their claim there.
Yeah, definitely. Nice. Good one to go back to, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure I'll either be talking about that more or more Fallout stuff in the future. But yeah, it's real good.
We'll have to see if you finish that or if I finish Far Cry 5.
Right. Or if neither of us finish it and we talk
Yeah.
about a new game, which is pretty likely with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been slowing down on that a little bit, but I still play it every now and then. We'll see what happens.
You don't have to defend yourself to me, Ben. You have to defend yourself to the people.
Oh. All right. Well, we'll check in next week and see how I do.
So with that, do you want to start transitioning over to our special topic for today?
Let's do it.
Yeah, and to switch things up, I actually did research and I'm going to be doing the special topic this time around.
Heck
So
yes.
for today, what we're going to be looking at is a series of cartridges called the PC-50x cartridges. 50x just refers to the whole series of cartridges, which were labeled 501 through 508. So I guess it's really 500x, but it's just easier to say as 50x.
Mm-hmm.
And these were basically cartridges that were used in consoles that still qualified as first generation consoles. And I think mainly that distinction comes from the fact that these used AY3 8500 or 8600 and apparently one rare case of an 8700 chips made by General Instruments. And the whole chip was in the cartridge. So most of what was needed to actually play all of these games was stored in the cartridge and not in the console. Whereas some of the second generation consoles that we've looked at, they had the game data stored in a ROM in the cartridge, but the game itself and like the functionality was actually on the console.
Yeah, like the CPU was like in the console for second gen, and the CPU is like in the cartridge for these guys.
Basically, right. Yeah. And that's probably a better way to describe it. I don't know tons about how it actually works, but that's sort of where the distinction lies.
Yeah, so something that's like interesting to me that I wanted to throw in real fast is that this is the same distinction that made the original Magnavox Odyssey first generation, and it's weird to me that like 5 years later they're like re-implementing that again. It's like I thought we were past this, but they're like, nope, let's go back. 1972.
Yeah, and I figured that these had to have sort of taken influence from the second generation consoles and been like, oh, maybe the whole thing that the Odyssey did way back then actually wasn't a bad idea. But it just feels like it's a little too late for that now. And also you can kind of do cooler stuff with what's happening with the second generation consoles now. But anyway, most of these use the AY3 8600 chip, which I'll be talking about a little bit more in depth once we get to the timeline. They had various different games on them. A lot of them were Pong games, but they did have some other variations. And basically, all of the consoles themselves were just different colors made by different companies, and some of the cartridges were also produced by different companies with different names. But most of them did the same thing. A lot of them were referred to as the SD 050, 070, and 090 type consoles, which were just different shells, and it seems like model numbers that a couple different companies used. Like some of them referred to them as the SD50, even though they were different consoles by different companies. And another thing with these is that they were mainly being produced and sold in Europe and Asia at the time. They would actually continue to be sold into the early 80s, where first generation kind of died off a lot quicker in the US because of the newer consoles that were available there a lot sooner, like the Atari 2600, which will be coming out. That didn't make its way over to the European and Asian markets until a little later, so these kind of hung around for a while. So getting into what the consoles that paired with these PC-50x cartridges actually looked like, across pretty much all of the companies that made them, they were almost exactly the same. They were kind of just a rectangular box that had 10 buttons in the center for game selection, and then also had 2 detachable controllers that you could use that were still wired into the console, but they just had 1 joystick and then 1 button on them for the various different Pong and target games that could be played on these. And there is this kind of weird distinction between some of the consoles where some of them had a little plastic cover over the pins for the cartridge, like you would see on like a Sega Genesis or an N64. But then some of them just didn't. Like, I don't know if they didn't figure out that it would be good to protect the electronics or not, or maybe it came later that they were like, oh, these are popping off because kids keep sticking their fingers in there or something. I don't know. But I think it's pretty interesting that some were just like, nah, we don't need it. And so basically, that's what the PC-50x cartridges were. It was just a General Instruments chip that ran most of the games, and then a ton of these cheap consoles that were made by a bunch of different companies that all were made to run this chip.
Yeah, pretty interesting stuff, because it's just weird that the technology feels like old and new at the same time. Like the chips that they're putting inside each cartridge are like way more advanced than what we saw on the Odyssey, but at the same time, it's like the same type of technology behind both systems. I don't know.
Yeah, it's almost like it kind of went in a circle, and they were like, nah, that doesn't work, and then they're like, oh wait, it does work now that we have these better chips, maybe, or I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting that it kind of took on a little bit to realize that this might be a good idea again.
Mm-hmm. And it's weird that like at this time in 77, with the second generation consoles already kind of coming out, that General Instruments, the makers behind probably the most famous chip of all the chips, was like, instead of doing second gen, we're just going to sell our chips on cartridges from now on, which is like a weird way of doing it, but I guess it worked for them for a while, especially in those other markets like that you mentioned. So I feel like this also isn't that well known, the PC-50x line. There's not that much info on it, but I think it's a pretty important and interesting moment in history.
Yeah, it sort of seems like that interesting in-between step of fully leaving first-generation consoles and committing to second-generation consoles. You got this weird thing going on in other markets that don't have access to the most advanced or the newest technology right away. It's sort of this weird like limbo almost in between those two areas.
Right. Before we move on, there's one other thing I wanted to add, and that's that as I was doing research on PC-50x, I really tried to figure out which cartridges came out in what year. Obviously, I know that the first one came out in 77, but beyond that, I don't think anybody really knows. Almost every major place I go to find research didn't have any dates listed for the games, and I found like one or two kind of forum posty, not as trustworthy sites that had all of them in 77. I saw some that had them broken in between a couple of years. Ultimately, kind of fell on me to just kind of make a decision about it, and is no decision I could feel 100% good with, but it just didn't really feel right to me that they would have all come out in 77. As Wes mentioned, there's like 8 or 9 of them, I want to say. And they're like separate chips. I mean, to me, chips don't come out that fast, and they're not really related. Each one is very different from the last one.
Right.
So I ended up breaking it about in half, and we're going to do half of them in 77 and half of them in 78. But I just wanted to be clear that I don't know for sure that that's how they did come out, but if I had to put money on it, that's what I would bet, So that's what we're going to be doing, and we're just going to be covering the 501 today, but going forward, we're going to cover, I want to say through 504 maybe in 77, something like that, and then the rest in 78. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say on that.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all we had for the PC-50x series of cartridges. And with that, why don't we start heading over to the timeline?
Hello and welcome back from that amazing musical interlude. Whoever recorded that must be just a musical genius. So, but let's get into it. Today's a little bit weird, a little bit special. We're actually, if you include all the games on all the consoles we're going to talk about today, it's like 39 games we're going to talk about. So, that in combination with just like the honorable mentions that were available, Wes and I are only going to rate one game apiece in this episode. So we're going to start off here with a console that I almost rated. I did a bunch of extra research into, and then I was like, this really isn't anything newsworthy. And that's the Colormatic by Coleco. The reason I thought it might be interesting is because it has a chip in it that I didn't know much about, which is the SN76499 chip, which is by Texas Instruments. And it's mainly a color chip, essentially. But inside the console, there's also an 8500. So I didn't realize at the time that the Texas Instrument chip was just a color thing. I thought maybe it added some extra games or something, but it's just color. And the color does look like a little bit different from the normal 85 consoles with color, but not enough for me to be like, wanting to rate it again. Essentially, you've got the same 8500 games here. It's like hockey, handball, tennis, and then they call it Ali, I don't know, which is just the 2-player handball. Maybe it's Spanish or something, I don't know, but
yeah, it looks like it would be like a I don't know, based on the spelling that I'm seeing, maybe like an Arabic sport, but I don't want to just I could be very wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, it's spelled JAI then dash ALAI. So yeah, that's basically the 2-player handball. It's the same for 8500 games that we've rated, I want to say like 3 or 4 times by now. So while the color's a little bit different, I want to say it's a little bit more like textured as opposed to just like a flat color that we see in a lot of the 8500s. I mean, it looked like decent, but I honestly was like, I don't want to play all the same games and then give it like a 0.5 higher in graphics.
Yeah.
And by now, the gameplay ratings are going to be probably lower than they were last time, so it wouldn't really matter. So ultimately, I was just like, let's keep it honorable mention. But yeah, it's a Colormatic by Coleco.
And then next up, we are taking a look at the Creative Computing May-June issue, starting off with the Computomat games and brain games for mainframe, which was by Creative Computing, and then the Computomat new games, which were basically just programs for some library games that were coin operated. And then next after that, we have Twonky, which I love the name. Those PC games always have weird names, but it's basically just Hunt the Wumpus, but played in a maze on a grid.
Does that make it better?
I'm not sure. It depends if there were actually any visuals at all for me.
I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I doubt there were.
After that, in the May-June issue here, we have some more info on Pilot. We mentioned this in the past, but Pilot is another computing language that I guess is kind of gaining popularity right now, although I don't think it'll stay around that long. But I'm not sure if the next one was programmed with Pilot or in BASIC, but either way, it's called Swarms, and it's a simulation game based on defending North America from a swarm of bees, which is like, who makes this? I couldn't play it because the code is just like too complicated to try to get running. So I only had like a little bit of info on this, but it seems kind of almost like a pandemic type game where you have to like throw resources at where the swarms start to prevent them from getting bigger, I guess, or from doing more damage. So it sounds pretty cool, but we couldn't play it.
And then next up, we have one that I think is pronounced Euchre, and it's a version of a card game based on the same name that seems pretty complicated. In case you want to take a look at it, it's spelled EUCHRE.
Yes, I actually looked this up.
Okay.
Because I was debating, maybe playing this one as well and trying to rate it. And I went to YouTube and watched like a tutorial video on the card game. And the tutorial video was so bad and just like so full of jargon. I had no idea what they were talking about in the tutorial. And I was like, well, it's beyond me.
Until someone comes out with a tutorial for the tutorial, we're lost and we can't play it.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just a not good tutorial, I think. But it seems like some sort of hard card game. I don't know. But that's going to move me to the first one that I rated today. Both Wes and I have rated consoles, and they are pretty important and big consoles. This one has 16 games on it. That's a lot of games.
It's a lot of games.
Luckily, or maybe not unluckily, they're all pretty much the same. So I'm going to take a crack at rating all 16 in one rating, and we'll see how it goes. This console is called Ultra Pong, and it's by Atari, and it's the follow-up to Super Pong, which I think has been one of our favorite consoles up to this point. I don't know about US, but
Yeah.
Super Pong was really good. It's probably the most well known for its rainbow color graphics, and that does make a reappearance here in Ultra Pong, which is great.
Oh, fantastic.
Because other than what Fisco 400 or whatever that you did, Wes, I don't think even any arcade machine has been able to do that. So it's a really, really cool effect, and there's just a very nice color gradient between a couple major colors in a way that like is really satisfying to look at. So that makes a reappearance, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later. Just some quick background. The model number is C402, and also 402D, which is the doubles version. I'll be talking about the doubles version mainly in this, which just added another set of paddles, essentially. So that version is also called Ultra Pong Doubles, and we also have the Sears version called Pong Sports 4. But getting into this, I kind of want to talk about the games first, and then I'll do my ratings at the end to wrap it up. Because there's 16 games. That's a lot of games.
It's a lot of games.
Really, there's only 2, and then there's like a lot of options. So you have Pong. That's your standard type Pong game. You can only go up and down. Normal Pong. And then you have hockey, and in this version of hockey, it's the type where the goal is kind of like inset on the screen a little bit. I think there's one in the one you did as well, Wes, that's like that.
Yeah.
But the goal's, it's not like just a hole in the wall at the end. It's actually like in the screen, and then the ball can bounce behind the goal, which makes it a lot more realistic to like a hockey net, like where the puck and people can go behind. So those are the 2 main games, and then we have a bunch of options. So option number 1 is just the normal 2 or 4 players version of Pong or hockey. So that's the normal version. And then we have a version where each player has 2 paddles each, and the paddles, it's like, kind of a goalie by the net, and then one towards the middle of the screen, but it's on your side. That's an option. And then another option is each player has 2 paddles, but now it's a goalie and 1 paddle on your opponent's side of the screen. So I don't know how much sense that makes, but like I can think about it like if you have a kind of 4 points along a line. The first version's like you have points 1 and 2, and your opponent has 3 and 4. But this version is you have 1 and 3, and your opponent has 2 and 4. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but
yeah, for me, the way I think about it is like some of the Pong variants that are soccer or football, basically, where you have a forward on the other side of the field.
Right. So those are 2 different things in this, and then you have another option that is each player has 3 paddles per person, which is my favorite one, because if you have 4 players and they each have 3 paddles, it's pretty fun, I think. That's a lot of different paddles. There's 12 paddles on the screen. In this case, it's 2 on your side and 1 on your opponent's. But those are 4 different options. So you have, again, it was 1 paddle per person, 2, they're both on your side, 2 ones on the opponent's side, and then 3 paddles per person. So that's 4 options for Pong and 4 options for hockey. So we got 8 games right now. And then to get the other 8, you just flip a switch to turn on barriers, and then you have another 8 games, essentially. And all the barriers it's really weird how they do them, but it's essentially, what's the best way to describe it? Like little walls that come down from the center. It's not directly on the center line. There's like one slightly to the left of the center line and one slightly to the right, but they come down from the center, from the top and the bottom, and leave a gap in the middle for you to, put the ball through. But it's kind of weird because normally when we get barriers and obstacles, it's usually kind of on the corners, I want to say. Like it's weird that it's like in the center of the bottom and top edges. I don't know. It just feels like a weird place to have it.
Yeah.
But basically you turn that on and you get another 8 games apparently. And that's it. 16 games.
Wow.
I don't know if you can believe it.
They flew by. I do want to ask about the 4-player modes for this.
Yes.
Was that sort of not elimination style where there's someone on top of the bottom, but more like where it's quadrants and it's almost like 1v1 and 1v1?
It is more like quadrants.
Okay.
It's 2v2 essentially.
Right. Okay.
But you are kind of restricted in that one player gets like the top half of their side and the other player gets the bottom half, and I don't think you can go in between halves. So you're kind of responsible for like your corner or whatever.
Right. It's like a team match as far as scoring, but it's basically like 2-1v1s.
Right. So it's pretty interesting. There's only one ball, so it's not like I feel like we've seen some where there's been kind of 2-1v1s, but there's actually two different balls, and the ball can't go in between the sides. But it is more just one ball, and you just have a corner that you're defending. But I like it. I'll talk more about the 4-player later, but I think it's one of the best parts about the console because we don't see a lot of 4-player consoles around.
Yeah.
And to have apparently 16 games all with 4-player options is pretty crazy. So let me get a little bit more into my ratings now, because now that we've covered the basics of the gameplay, I guess, it's very much just Pong games here, but there's some interesting things that I like. So let's start with graphics, because I have to talk about how good this looks. I mean, the rainbow color, even though we've seen it before now, it's like still like awesome. I don't know. We just don't see stuff that looks like this. It's always solid colors, and to have a kind of very clean gradient across the screen, like other people need to figure out how to do this because it's really good. It also has, I think this was in the Super Pong. I don't know if you remember, Wes, but in this case, whenever somebody wins, it goes to this screen I think it's called a light show. And it's just like these squares that kind of like go in and out of one another and just make different rainbow patterns on the screen. It's kind of cool.
Oh, crazy. If Super Pong did have it, I don't think I talked about it or reviewed it. So either it didn't or I didn't research it.
I think it did, but I think it only did it maybe like on the console startup screen or something like that.
Yeah.
But here it's like after when anybody wins, which in every game it's when somebody gets to 15. So I like that. And interestingly enough, the two different games, Pong and Hockey, are each a little bit different in how they're set up. They both have different gradients, first of all, but for Pong, the actual play field is a black screen, and then you get the border of the rainbow color on the top and the bottom, and then the rainbow color also can like shine through the actual ball that goes around the screen, so the ball changes colors as well, through the black background.
Right.
It's maybe a little counterintuitive since you have like these amazing rainbow, but a lot of the screen is black. But I actually think it looks really cool and nice, so I like it a lot. And then Hockey is actually the rainbow is the background, and you're playing on the rainbow, but that means that the ball and the paddles are all black. So I think they're both really, really nice looking, to be honest, but it's kind of an inverse of one another, so it makes those playing fields a little bit different. And like I mentioned, the gradients themselves are different between those two games, just with what colors are there. So I think it actually looks really nice still, even after a year of other games coming out, like we just don't get stuff that looks like this.
Right.
So it's cool. Obviously it has on-screen scoring and stuff, but another really cool addition it has is Team 2, all of their paddles are striped, which we've seen before, but it's just so nice to have.
Yeah.
Again, especially when some paddles are on the opponent's side of the playing field, to know which ones are yours, it's just super nice. And again, there can be 12 paddles on the screen, so knowing which ones are yours are really important. And it's just like one of the easiest to look at games or consoles that we've ever done, I think. It's very clear. You know exactly what you're doing, and it looks good. Even though it's only Pong again, there's no sprites or anything like that. But honestly, I'd almost rather have this than the sprites that look terrible.
Right, yeah.
So it just looks really clean and really good. And so for the rating there, I ended up, at first I was like, I wasn't going to go like up to a 3, but then with the striped paddles like also being there, I was like, I got to go up to a 3. So I gave it 3 out of 10 for graphics.
Nice.
Yeah. Another easy rating here, sound. It's only Pong sounds again. And I feel like I'm getting more annoyed with this. Originally, I think I would give it like a 1 out of 10. I gave this a 0.5. I'm like, come on. Really? Just normal Pong sounds? Come on. I know this is Atari, so they kind of own Pong sounds, but please. And then for gameplay, this one I think is going to be the surprising one, Wes. I gave gameplay a 3 out of 10, and let me tell you why.
Oh man, I'm ready for this explanation.
It's got to be good, right?
It better be good.
I was thinking about it a lot, and the fact that it has 4 players, I just feel like with all the consoles that we've been looking at, it's always 2 or 1 player. You know, like for example, video pinball or Atari pinball that you did, which has been probably one of my favorites up until this point.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a 1-person console, for instance. You know, so what consoles can you really play with 4 people? And to have 16 different games and like it looks amazing, right? I just feel like this is the party console. If you have more than 2 people over at your house, you're going to pull this one out over any other console. I just felt really strong about that. I don't know. I just feel like it's the best Pong experience for more than 2 people that you can play. It's the best looking experience, and it makes it the go-to pull out of the closet when you have a party kind of console, and at 77 anyway.
Right.
And I think it'd be a lot of fun with 4 people, especially if you turned it to Ultra or whatever, and there was 12 paddles on the screen. I just think it'd be crazy. So that really adds a lot, and all 4 controllers are detachable, which is crazy as well. It's like that's really important too.
Yeah, because I mean we've seen people attempt to do 4-player before when it's like everyone's squished around the console, and that's not going to be very fun.
Yeah, this is all 4 are detachable, which is great. And by the way, the console itself and the controllers, I don't know, they don't look like incredibly interesting to me. The controllers are like, they look like TV remotes, but they have like a big dial on it, you know, essentially.
Right.
And then the console is just kind of like a gray looking console with a little sticker on it that shows all 16 games, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I just feel like, you know, if you have 2 people over even, what console are you going to pull out right now? Because video pinball was so good. I feel like it's so far ahead for the first generation side, but it was only 1 person. And then for 2 people, you've got Fairchild and stuff. But I still think like if you're showing somebody the best of what technology can do right now, you might pull this one out instead, even for 2 people, just because the colors are so freaking good. So, yeah. And with 4 people, I feel like it's a no-brainer. It's the one you go to. So, yeah, for that reason, I wanted to give gameplay kind of high. And like I mentioned before, the graphics really help out knowing exactly where the ball is. It's really easy to see. Knowing exactly what paddles you control, that's really easy to see. There's obviously scoring and stuff. So, it's just the best Pong experience on a console for multiple people. I was just really impressed by that kind of multiplayer component of it. We just don't see that.
Yeah, definitely. It's especially 4-player. I mean, I don't think about it much because I think I kind of conflate it with the cocktail tables. It's like when you think 4-player games, I think about them a lot. But really, we don't see many at all for 4-player consoles. So the fact that it can do that and it can do it well and it actually looks good, it's a lot in its favor, even though it is just Pong.
Yeah, I just feel like if you're having a dinner party and you have people over at your house, like this is the one to get, you know? And you're going to impress the most people with it and have the best time, I think, honestly. Like you could be playing Drag Race on Fairchild, you know, every 2 people switch off, but I'd rather play this, honestly. So, yeah, for gameplay, I gave 3 out of 10. Surprising since we've played so many Pong games, but I don't know, just you have a lot of different options, and 4 players adds a lot. And then for relevance, I wasn't quite sure where to go here. I kept going back and forth. Ultimately, I gave it 6 out of 10. I think the color alone makes it an important one to keep an eye out for, because somebody's got to steal this technology eventually. And when they do, it's going to be because of Ultra Pong and Super Pong. Obviously, it's also Atari, and I'm sure sold like decently well. So, you know, I had to give it some points there, but it's not doing that much new over Super Pong, honestly. You know, Super Pong had the great graphics. This still has it, and it has 4-player now on top. But beyond that, there's really not much new here. So, and it's still first gen, so it's not as important as some of the other ones we're going to talk about and see. So, just 6 out of 10 there. And then overall, I gave it 3 out of 10. I was like pretty happy with it. I mean, the color alone is like worth the price of admission, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I can't stress this enough. Like, arcade games at this time don't look as good as this. So it's pretty cool to see. So, and pretty cool to share with other people. So yeah, that's Ultra Pong / Pong Sports 2 and 4 from Sears and Atari. So yeah, that's all I got. Hopefully that made sense.
Well, I can agree, and it might be hard for people listening to kind of grasp it until you take a look at one of these. It could just be because of all the previous consoles we've been playing. We've seen color iterations, we've seen black and white iterations, but I remember feeling the same way playing Super Pong. Just something about that weird rainbow color. It's the spectrum that they can get, maybe because it's a static color instead of a changing color or what it is, but it just looks great. We could talk about it for a long time, but it looks great and makes the game more fun by how great it looks.
Yeah. I would even compare it to something like the original Drop Zone 4, which is what got me so hooked into Meadows games. Like, right. The gradients really make a big difference in how colors look. It's like having a sky that's all blue and then like a ground that's all green. It just doesn't look as good as like a sky that's like 3 tiers of blue and 3 tiers of green for the grass. Like, that makes a massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it was pretty cool. And you mentioned that the colors like aren't moving, but it seems weird because the ball will change colors. I think it's more like the ball is invisible and it's kind of like whatever's behind it is showing through. I don't really know, but it's really cool how it does it. So
yeah, it creates the illusion of movement of color because the ball and paddles move through those colors anyway.
Right. It's a cool one. So yeah, Ultra Pong. But why don't you talk to us about some PC-50x games now, Wes?
Yeah, so continuing on from the special topic that we had, I'm just going to give some honorable mentions of some PC-50x games, specifically the 501 games, and this is just going to be some consoles that used that cartridge, basically. And some of these, as we mentioned, were released in other countries. I think I'm going to get most of these names right, but no promises. All right, so let's start going through them. First off, we have the TV Games SD050 and 070 by TriStar, then the Color Stars by Talang, the Jeux Video Cassette Interchangeable and Telesports 3 by Univox, the Programmable Video Console XK4000 by Ingersoll, the LEM 2000 by Cable Electronics, the cassette program cartridge 4A8 by Conic, the Teleball Cassetten System by MBO, and then the Commander by Mercury. And yeah.
And just like with a lot of these lists that we talk about, I cut this list down dramatically. There's way more that use this chip. It's not like hundreds like with the 8500, but I want to say it was maybe 20 or 30 consoles. Not that use this chip, but were PC-50x consoles that came out in 77. One of those consoles I actually wasn't sure about. I wrote down most likely PC-50x, and it was called the Mark VI by Unimex. So if anybody knows for sure what it was, let me know. And that's going to kind of move us into the one that you rated, which is the 8610 chip. And the reason why we're talking about this right now is it's the same chip that was in the PC-501. So any of the 501 cartridges that worked with the PCX consoles, the 501 is this next chip, the 8610/15. So why don't you talk about that for a while, Wes?
Yeah, and just to start off, there were a couple different consoles that, as far as if I'm understanding it right, used this chip, but actually used the chip integrated with the console instead of the other ones that we previously talked about, which used it in the cartridge format. So just
That's
to
right.
mention those real quick. Okay, good, thanks. Just to mention those real quick, it was the Color Multispiel 4010 by Universum, the TVG 8610 by Hanimex, the Olympian 2600 by Unisonic, the TV Master Mark 10 by Binatone, and a ton more.
Yes.
So getting into these, so you have an idea of what the 501 PC cartridges and both the 8610 and 8615 chips did. It was nicknamed the Superstar at General Instruments when it came out, and we should mention that there were also other 8600 versions, I think from 1 through 10, that didn't include the two Target games that are going to be the big edition. Ben already talked about, I think, the 8600 flat and some of the games that were on that a little bit earlier. The 8610 was black and white, and the 8615 had color. And most of the consoles were pretty similar looking to the PC-50x consoles, as far as I could tell, where they had two detachable joysticks with one button under each of the joystick and then game select buttons in the center. So I'm going to do it sort of the same way. We have 10 different games to talk about. So throw all the games at you at first and then talk about what each one of them is and then go through my ratings after that. So a lot of these, I'm just going to give a quick refresher on. They're basically the same as what we saw on the 8600 chip. You have tennis, which is just typical Pong with a center line. You have hockey, which is a slightly smaller field with 4 solid borders and then also has the slightly inset net, similar to what Ben was just talking about. And one of the things that impressed me, which is the same thing that I think impressed you, is that it's actually solid, so the ball can bounce behind the net, which is one, a cool gameplay element, but also just adds that slight bit of realism that's like, oh yeah, I'm playing hockey, not just Pong where there's holes in a different spot. There's 2 paddles when you're playing hockey in this one. They both share the same vertical movement, but the one paddle could also move horizontally. So you control them both at the same time, but when you do the horizontal movement, only your forward one actually moves, and you could go onto the other side of the field. So really, with one game, they just hit 4 different versions of a game in Ultra Pong right there.
That's true. It's kind of weird, though. I feel like having a goalie that stays back by the goal and the forward can move, it actually feels probably very similar to like real hockey. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, the more I looked at it, I was like, that's a small thing, but that's actually a really cool feature that simplifies it so much, because some of the movement before was just so confusing, but now it's just like, okay, vertical movement is just my goalie. That's all I need to worry about. And then I can do whatever I want with my forward, even though they're still locked on the same horizontal plane. But yeah, so I thought that was, I mean, it's a small difference, but it's nice. It makes hockey seem a lot more fun. Then next up, we have soccer/football, which was very similar to hockey as far as the paddle placement and movement, but instead of nets, it just had walls with edges with a hole. So sort of typical to what we've seen with some of the older Pong-style soccer, football, hockey versions. Then there was squash, which is just about what you'd expect, except the wall's on the left side in the version, which I feel like we always see it on the right side. I don't know, very small difference, but it threw me off a little bit. And then you have practice squash, which is, as it implies, just squash except one player. I don't know if we've seen this in some of the other ones. I'm sure it was in the base 8600, but it actually does keep score. Some of the practice modes were just kind of like so stripped down. It was just a paddle hitting up against a wall and there was no context. This one is at least easier to see your score at the end, so you could be like, oh, I was practicing and got 10 points. You know, it's a small thing, but I think it was a nice change.
Does it go up when you hit the wall, or is it like how many times you've lost because it went past you? I feel like I've seen it where it would kept score, but it was kind of like with the other person because it would go up when it went past you.
I think this one does both. I think it actually shows how many times the ball got past you as the opponent's score, and then it shows how many times your paddle hit the ball, not how many times it hit the wall, as your points. I think.
Oh, nice.
I know it at least tracked how many times you hit the ball. I forget if it tracked how many times it went off screen. But yeah, I thought makes sense.
That's a good change, you know?
Yeah, it's a small thing, but it actually makes that a little bit more playable, although it's still, just one player squash. Next up, we have grid ball, which is basically just foosball. Same one that Ben had described earlier, where it's kind of backwards foosball almost. You don't have, they're like big walls with holes, and you're trying to bounce the ball between the holes to get it onto the other side. But it's the same as foosball, where you have like alternating lines of who controls what. Then we have basketball, which is only the 2 paddles, baskets at the top of the screen. But basically, other than that, it's Pong. I personally found it a little weird that there's no gravity to the ball because it's still Pong rules. So it's kind of, you really got to hit a weird angle to get it into the basket. But again, it is nice that there's actually a basket with collision instead of just a hole at the top of the screen and calling it basketball.
I think to be fair, did you do I forget who did what first, but the video pinball is like, which is what the basketball with gravity was. Like that was such a unique one.
Yeah, yeah. And that might have come out around the same time as the 8600, the base 8600 chip. I'm not sure, but yeah, maybe that's why I have a bad taste in my mouth for this one, because that one looked really hard to play as well, but I kind of liked the way the ball moved in that. Whereas this, it's weird to me that you can just sit your paddle in front of the basket and it's like your guy's just floating in midair and not
Yeah,
falling
that's
down at
true.
all. There's no like a jump button or anything.
Right.
And then next up for the eighth game, we have basketball practice, which was just one net and one player. So that was the basic 8 games, which I think you also covered all of those when you talked about the 8600. The
Yes.
two new ones that are on both the 8610 and the 8615 are target games, which are kind of stripped down and simple, but let me describe them to you. They're each of the players in the two per player version are plus signs basically, and there's a square target that moves across the screen from left to right. It can come from different heights and different angles, and it sort of just bounces off the top and bottom of the screen. You have to hover your plus over the square and hit the target or hit your fire button at the right time to make it disappear and to get a point. Something weird though I noticed, and it could have just been with the specific console I was looking at, though I'm guessing it was for all of them, is there wasn't any bottom or top line. So until you got used to the game, you couldn't tell where the square was going to bounce up, which in a game where you have to track the movement of something to shoot it seems a little bit difficult.
Hmm.
And then the 10th game that we had on this chip was the one-player version of Target, where it does sort of the same thing with squash, where it keeps score and the other quote-unquote player gets a point if the target is missed, but you get a point if the target's hit. So it's nice that you get to see, okay, I missed this many targets and I hit that many, right with the score that's up there. And speaking of that, the score is always on screen in the
Oh.
it's a little weird. Yeah, it's not too obtrusive because it's small, but it's especially weird in Gridball where the screen's already busy enough with all the foosball
Yeah.
walls, but then there's just like these two little scores nestled in between two of them. It's real strange, but I did like that they were color coded to match the paddle for each player in the 8615 versions of this. And also just to note that some consoles did have different colors for each of the games. One of the ones that I specifically looked at more in depth had the same color scheme, which was just green background, white borders, yellow for one paddle, blue for the other paddle. But it did look like this chip was capable of doing different colors for different games too. So jumping into my ratings for this, for graphics, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. There were definitely improvements over the 8500 series of chips for this, but I still felt like I was just left wanting more. Like the lines were crisp, like other versions of these General Instruments chips that we've seen, and I'm always glad to see color versions, but there isn't really that much interesting or new going on. Color-coded scores and paddles are nice, but the fact that the score is always on screen is weird.
Yes.
It's, I don't know, we've said before that we aren't big fans of that, and that could just be us, but it's always a little weird to me. The nets are a nice addition because it's not just a hole in the wall, but they're just simple white lines. There isn't like any attempt to actually draw like a little cosmetic basketball net that didn't have collision under the basketball. And considering that there were also black and white versions of this that I'm kind of rating at the same time, it doesn't really seem like great graphics for 1977, so that's why I gave it a 1.5 for that.
No rainbow. What can you do?
No rainbow, basically. That's the main thing. And for sound, I was a little bit more generous than you because there were, as far as I could tell, the exact same two Pong sounds. So I give it a 1 out of 10. It's not great. I mean, you hear how excited we get when any of these games have music. Going back to one of these, we're just like, what were they thinking?
Yes.
And then the gameplay for this, I gave a 2 out of 10. I think the variety of games is one of the better aspects of these consoles that use this chip, but it's still not like that great. I like the Target games, but they're pretty simple, and I do like the changes that they made to basketball and hockey. But some of the games just seem kind of hard to play or not that different or fun. I know you like the basketball in this version, but I really just felt like it felt weird because it didn't have like gravity physics. That could just be me, but I didn't like it for that. And also, I'm fine with practice modes on these kind of chips, but when you're counting basically three different practice modes, if you count the one player target shooting as a practice mode and calling them like 3 out of 10 games, it just feels a little bad, you know? Although they were actually pretty good versions of those practice modes. It's just they're not all that different than everything else that's going on these chips.
Yeah. What's weird to me is like if you compare this to the 8500 series, the 8500 had like 4 Pong games, and then it had 2 target shooting games like this, but it actually used a light gun. For the longest time, I thought the 2 target games that you are rating now were light gun games, but they're not. And I'm like, that's kind of a weird. I feel like they would have been better as light gun games. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was thinking that too when I was watching somebody play it. At first, I thought the controls were attached to the console, which would have been really bad because it's like a joystick and then a button right under it. They are detachable, so I mean, you can kind of get a comfortable handhold for playing the target shooting games, but I doubt you can really get great precision movement with that joystick. And it probably just doesn't feel as good as like aiming at the screen at a target. Like you have to maneuver this thing and then press the button. But yeah,
Right.
it seems like a weird step backwards. I mean, I guess it makes it all more all in one. You don't need peripherals and stuff like that. But
I feel like that was like one of the cells, though. You know.
exactly, yeah. I mean,
I
these
don't
like
know.
cool, cheesy plastic guns that you could shoot at the screen with. It's awesome. But yeah, for changing the target games to that just seems kind of strange. I agree.
And then like the other thing I wanted to ask you is about maybe I'm just a little confused with the target games, but like how similar is it to like Shooting Gallery from the Fairchild? Because that one we really liked, but it also like changed where the spawns were and stuff, and I think you were restricted. I forget how you caught the ball, but I feel like you were restricted going like a certain direction or something.
Yeah, I think that you shot at a different angle every time and the target was static.
Oh, that's right.
The target was in a different spot every
No, the
time.
target moved, I think,
Yeah,
and you had to time your shot.
that's right. I think it moved up and down on a line. I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then you were in a different vertical position and also shooting at a different angle each time.
So
Which
that was like a shooting game, and this is more like a catching game. It sounds like.
sort of, yeah, it like comes at you at a certain angle and you have to figure it out and move. I don't know if it's just because the way it looked like it played with like not much visual context and the fact that both the ball is moving and your target is moving. But for some reason, Shooting Gallery felt a little bit better to me, maybe because it was a little bit more restricted. So, like, I had time to say, to line up my shot, and it didn't feel like I was
Right.
just like figuring everything out on the fly.
Right? Because if you miss it in these target games, a brand new situation comes, right? Like right away.
Right.
Whereas with Shooting Gallery, you got the like multiple chances at catching the same thing, and it would only change to the next kind of setup after you actually succeeded in shooting the target.
Exactly. Yeah. So I kind of like that gameplay loop, if you can call it that, better. Although I do think this had the benefit of having two player. That would have been pretty hectic, but the idea of fighting over one target, I could see that being pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I did want to mention about the gameplay that I did really like is the movement of the paddles that we were talking about in football and hockey. Just pretty much like we mentioned before, the vertical movement and then the horizontal locked for the goalie, but you can actually move it for the forward. I think that's a really smart way to play these like Pong versions of those games, and it seems like it would feel pretty good when you were playing it.
Yeah.
And of course, having a grid ball in there is also great.
I just like how it looks.
Yeah, yeah, it just kind of
It's very hectic looking, but also very like colorful at the same time. I don't know.
yeah. And because there's a lot more player controlled things, they have like a lot more color on screen. And just yeah, it looks good because it looks crazy and it looks like it's fun too.
Yeah.
So while I did ding the gameplay score a little bit, there were definitely some good things about this chip and the games that it had on it. So now for relevance, I gave it a 5 out of 10. I'm glad we're continuing to leave the 8500 series behind. So I think that's important for General Instruments. They're moving forward to this whole 8600 series, but I don't really know if it makes enough innovations over the 8500 to make it super impactful. I do think, though, that these consoles could be relevant for their possible contribution to a video game crash in the future, just by looking at how many we read and knowing how many more there are that we didn't read.
Yes.
So I think it made some nice changes, but nothing super impactful over what we already had with consoles like this in the past.
Yeah, maybe like impactful because of volume and not necessarily like good gameplay.
Right. Yeah. So I'm kind of skewing my relevance, because if you think about it that way, then it's very relevant because there were so many of them. But I meant more as far as relevance of improving the gameplay. Yeah. So then my overall rating for this, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. I think that these are definitely an improvement over AY3 8500s in both gameplay and visuals, but there's still enough elements that feel a little too similar for me that I'm kind of just wanting a little bit more. But I do think that they make some really nice changes to hockey and soccer, and they added cool games like Grid Ball and the 2 Target games, but it feels like we've seen a lot of this on other second generation consoles that are coming out before this.
True.
Or around the same time as this, at least. So it's cool. It's nice. I just would have appreciated something a little different, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's my review of the 8610 and 8615 chips and a couple of the different consoles that use them.
And the PC-501, I guess, because it's the same.
Because it's basically the same thing. Yeah, so those like 20 consoles we listed and maybe 40 more all played pretty much the same thing there.
Yep.
And then so moving into our next honorable mention, we're going to start taking a look at the People's Computers May and June issue. The first one we have is In-Out Game, which was written in the Pilot language that we've mentioned a couple times. You basically would type in words and the computer would tell you if they were in or out, which would mean whether or not it followed a hidden rule that you were trying to figure out. And then after you make a bunch of guesses, you need to basically show that you understand what the rule is that the computer is hiding by letting the computer give you words, and then you have to correctly say whether they are in or out. I mean, it kind of sounds interesting, but it's still just like a word guessing game.
Right.
It's like a math problem of trying to figure out where X is if you're multiplying two things together. I don't know. Never mind. But
they had an example playthrough of that, and I looked at it and I was like, I really have no idea what the rule is. I don't have no idea if it was like words that all start with a letter or were like plurals, or if they all had like 2 E's in the name. Like, I've got no clue.
Right.
But yeah, I guess it's a interesting one. And then the last game for today, game 39, if you can believe it. It's called Hexagon, again from the People's Computer Company, May-June issue, which, by the way, actually, I think this is the first issue where they changed their name. I wasn't quite sure where this was going to pop up, but the People's Computer Company changes their name to People's Computers. That's the new newsletter. I've got no idea why they would do that, because it's basically the same. But
right.
Yeah, so if you hear us start to mention People's Computers instead of the People Computer Company or whatever, that's why they did do a name change. So, and I think the volume's like reset to volume 1.1 again, which is kind of weird. But yeah, so People's Computers. And then the second game here and the last game for today is called Hexagon. And essentially there's a bunch of points located like on a 2D hexagon. Some of those points are kind of like hidden, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like a random looking arrangement of points on this hexagon. And again, I have no idea why there's a hexagon involved at all, but whatever. Essentially, a player picks a point on that hexagon, and then all of the dots on that point's like diagonals become hidden and or count as points for that player. So it's basically kind of like a weird version of tic-tac-toe or something like that. But you're like grabbing points off a hexagon. It's a very strange game.
Right.
It does make sense if you read it and look at the pictures, but it's just kind of like, why would I do this? when the hexagon has no more points, that's when whoever has the most points wins. But it's a very strange one. Kind of think about like tic-tac-toe mixed with Connect 4 or something. But yeah, another math game done.
There you go.
And that'll do it for us today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's kind of a weirder episode today. A lot of consoles with a lot of games on them, but the games themselves weren't all that that new or unique from one to another, especially for Ultra Pong. But even a little bit in the PC-501 games. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, though. We covered a lot and a lot of good stuff. But I'm ready to get back into arcades. I don't know about you, Wes.
Oh yeah, I'll be happy to see some of them soon. In the meantime, make sure to check us out on Twitter, send us an email if you have any questions, and take a look at our website to see some of the stuff that we've done in the past.
Oh, yeah. And that'll do it for us today. So we will check you guys later.
See you guys in the next one.